Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Christine Driscoll, Human Resources Director. I am honored to be the first speaker tonight. I am going to ask that you please hold any questions until we're all four done. Our topics do have an overlap, and then whichever one of us can best address, we'll happily hop back up here for you. I've been here for over 20 years, and I can safely say that these are unusual times. The pressures and uncertainty of the last 2 years are weighing heavy on employees at all levels. When you take an already extremely lean organization and face a pandemic and unprecedented times for hiring and employment, it takes a toll. Employees are our organization's most important piece. The value we place on retention of those employees and the ability to recruit knowledgeable, capable applicants to join their team is the best way that we can show how much we value them and their commitment to serve the citizens of this community. To give you a little background, several of the topics that you'll hear about tonight have been a focus over the last year, and specifically the last several months. As staff work to proactively address employee concerns, better retention levels, and increase our ability to attract great employees across a variety of fields. The City of Stillwater is facing the difficulties of retention and recruitment that is currently seen across the community and nation. Positions have been opened multiple times, and some positions have been unfilled for longer periods of time than we've ever seen in the past. For example, we have positions at 2 years of vacancies. We have departments and divisions at less than 50% staff that impact our critical services. We have contracts with recruitment specialists for high-level professional positions who are having the same difficulties as we are in even able to source us candidates. Hiring processes have changed in some of our areas to fast-track applicants on board. We have talked to employees when they leave employment, and we have reviewed salaries in a number of areas in an effort to remain competitive. The number of eligible applicants is lower than in the past, and the difficulty in being able to have applicants who can and will complete the hiring process, references, drug testing, driving records, and competing offers has increased. In conversations with employees leaving employment, they cite better pay, work from home, flexible schedules, and retirement benefits as some of the main factors in them leaving. At the end of this presentation, Becky Taylor will share a few preliminary high-level results of the recent employee engagement survey. The hope is to take the conversation points we have identified prior to the survey, which will be presented tonight, pair them with new ideas developed by hearing our employees via the results of the survey, and take action that will help us to better become an employer of choice to best serve our citizens. In order to stay competitive, the city must look at items that employees currently find valuable in their jobs. 4 key points have been identified under recruitment and retention: our benefits, our retirement program, our salaries, and work schedules. Benefits are a primary source of questions from applicants during the interview and hiring phase. They also are a key component of retention and are noted as a driver in employee satisfaction. Staff has had preliminary meetings with our insurance broker, and due to increasing plan costs and costs associated with medical care, we are expecting an increase in the cost of our insurance plans for the coming fiscal year. Each year, we strive to balance fiscal responsibility of the plan while ensuring that health benefits the employees receive are valuable to them in their employment choices. The need to maintain the benefits program is critical to retention and recruitment. This topic will be later brought back to Council when we have more information based on actuary reports and data from our broker on plan placement and design. For retirement, in a few minutes, you'll hear from Melissa Reams, who will be speaking to you regarding the retirement plan for general employees. This item is based on talking points collected from current and terminating employees. The discussion will not include police and fire, as they're covered under separate pension plans. When we get to the salaries section, compensation is a very difficult situation for us to address. As a municipality, we are tasked now more than ever of competing with private business for the labor market. Private businesses raise salaries during periods of extreme competitiveness for personnel and in response to high periods of inflation, as well as situations unknown, such as COVID. We are continually reviewing and reevaluating salaries in order to stay competitive in the current labor market. We've also provided bonuses to aid in the compensation struggles and as a gesture of employee appreciation. Without an adjustment to our compensation structure, we have reached the point where we will not be able to continue to provide the city services that citizens expect and deserve. I'd like to read you an excerpt from an email of one of the consultants sent to me as part of our conversation. Hi, Christy, but we're fully booked through the end of the year. Staffing shortages and wage competitiveness are current problems for all municipalities. For those with financial wherewithal, we're recommending pay range maximum increases of 4% if affordable. It goes on to speak a little bit more about inflation and excess farm increases, etc. But this is what it concludes with. Municipalities, and well with staffing compensation, have to recognize and articulate their other attributes for retention and recruitment, namely benefit packages, job stability, and a much calmer, nicer, family-friendly work environment. This email highlights two realities that we are facing right now. Compensation is a struggle for all, and across-the-board increases are a recommended strategy to aid in the situation. A second consultant I spoke with talked about struggles that Oklahoma municipalities face in developing comparables. The differences between communities is vast, and what exactly makes a company or another community a comp is the true question. Also, there isn't a clearinghouse for the pay information so that a comparison deeper than position title can be easily reviewed. Also, municipalities are now having to face competition with private more than ever, and traditional municipal pay scales are having to undergo many changes than have ever been recognized before. At this time, we would like to address continued salary concerns in two ways. Recommendation for a single-time cost of living increase adjustment for general employees, and further discussions with a compensation consultant to better outline the city's long-term response to compensation. The most recent across-the-board living adjustment occurred in November of 2018. We believe a COLA, cost of living adjustment, will immediately help address concerns with salary for recruitment and retention and assist us with being a more attractive employer. The consultant will then come in and work with city staff to develop the long-term compensation strategy that will allow us to remain competitive, be more proactive in addressing labor fluctuations, and ensure fiscal responsibility for personnel cost. The goal is to place the city in a position where compensation is appropriate and competitive, and allows the city to maintain experienced, knowledgeable staff to best serve citizens in this community. Staff believe a COLA and full review of future compensation strategy will better position the city to do this. For work schedules, there are several departments across the city that currently run non-traditional schedules and several that rely on a traditional Monday through Friday 8 to 5. This item has been a big topic lately and has become even more of a retention recruitment topic as COVID has changed the way that many people view how, when, and where work may be completed. The city's purpose is to best serve the citizens of Stillwater, and we believe that a look at work schedules can present an opportunity to enhance that service while also providing a valued benefit to current and potential employees. Brady Moore tackled this issue, and I'm going to turn this topic over to him at this time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brady Moore, Chief Performance Innovation Officer. As Christy mentioned, in our current world and on this side of a pandemic, there's a lot of attention being directed towards examining how employers can pivot and adjust to the needs and demands of the modern employee's desire for an increased work-life balance, and the opportunities that they have for finding jobs that can accommodate this. Unfortunately, the private sector can make these pivots and changes more quickly, offering attractive, flexible work schedules. COVID showed us that we're not a work-from-home organization, but recent exit interviews from departing staff and requests from current staff have indicated the need for us to find solutions on how we can be a more flexible organization. Back in October, Norman and Melissa asked me to do an internal study to see if there is a possibility on how we, a local government organization, could make adjustments to our work scheduling to help us compete with what is being offered from the private side. I knew this was going to be a challenge because just of the nature of our business, of our essential community services and our promise to being a responsive organization to citizen needs. The study began by sitting down individually with each department head and asking them how their department scheduling is structured, how service hours could possibly be adjusted to better serve our citizens, and what they're hearing from their current employees on desired flexibility. A lot of useful data was gathered in these conversations, but what was discovered is that there was a clear difference between departments outside City Hall versus inside City Hall. For the departments that operate outside City Hall, those that include public works, water utilities, airport, fire, police, community resources, electric, waste management, they all already operate on non-traditional work schedules to cover extended hours of service, some even 24/7 hours of coverage. And on-demand services such as waterline breaks, hazardous weather conditions, utility outages, etc. These hybrid non-traditional work schedules can be attractive to employees as it gives them some level of flexibility. For example, our public utilities or public works crews work a 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. schedule. And this allows them for that family life balance in the afternoon of getting off early. But I want to reiterate, and in addition to this, we are doing a second phase of this study where we plan to circle back to these external departments to explore even more options on how we can look for creative ways to be more flexible in our scheduling that would be a benefit to our current and prospective employees. And for the departments inside City Hall, those that include IT, community development, engineering, utility billing, finance, municipal court, human resources, and the city manager's office, flexible work schedules are not really offered or available to employees, and the traditional 8-to-5 work schedule is pretty straightforward and rigid. It is believed that this is where we are losing some of our valued certified professionals. Knowing this, we searched for a creative solution that would increase retention, recruitment, and morale for staff while still benefiting the citizens with our services. And what we found is that there are other municipalities that have adjusted their City Hall hours of service in order to meet both of these demands. A few of these communities that have made this adjustment to their City Hall hours include Edmond, Owasso, and Mustang. The proposed hours that you might see on the slide here in a second are a change to a schedule of 4 9s plus 4. Monday through Thursday would be changed to 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and Friday would be 7:30 to 11:30 a.m. This adjustment to City Hall hours would give 9 new opportunities per week for citizens to come to City Hall and take advantage of our services before and after their traditional workday of 8 to 5. We believe this would be a benefit to the community as we now see contractors waiting for us to open at 8 a.m. to get permits. And we sometimes have citizens that need to come pay a utility bill after they get off their work shift at 5 p.m. Where this proposed change is a benefit to the employee, it's in the ability to have our Friday and afternoons off, providing for them some of the much needed flexibility and an increase to their work-life balance. When we spoke to the city manager of Mustang, Tim Rooney, about their change to 4 9s plus 4, he mentioned that they wanted to accomplish the same goals that we were striving for: increased service ability to the citizens and a better work schedule for the employees. They implemented the change in hours during a summer pilot program from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and he said they were a month into this change and his employees mentioned to him that they could never go back to the traditional 8 to 5 schedule. Tim also mentioned that they had answers prepared for citizen complaints, but in his words, they never received a single complaint. Jeff Matthews is our new community development director who recently joined the city of Stillwater from 20 years of service at the city of Edmond. Jeff observed firsthand the change to this 4 9s plus 4 City Hall schedule with Edmond. He talked about how much the entire staff enjoyed the effectiveness of the 9-hour workday, Monday through Thursday, with the flexibility of having Friday afternoons off. He said it was definitely a benefit to the citizens and employees at the city of Edmond. We have proposed to Mr. McNichol that we do a pilot program for this new work schedule this summer, from Memorial Day, May 30th, through Labor Day, September 5th, 2022. In addition, I want to add a couple notes to emphasize. First, we have discussed with Dana Maddox, our utility billing director, to identify Fridays that would fall on a busy move-in weekend. We could adjust our schedules to be open until 5 on these Fridays to accommodate these customers. Second, we are continuing our efforts to establish efficient online options that can be accessed 24/7 for customers to pay bills and tickets and to file and pay for permits. We believe this proposed City Hall schedule change is a win-win solution. It is a benefit to the citizens with the 9 extended service opportunities each week and a benefit to our staffing that we hope will help with retention, recruitment, and morale. The City of Stillwater is an excellent organization to work for, and we believe this alternative work schedule could be a good first step towards allowing us to compete with what is being offered from other organizations. Now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who's going to talk to you about our general employee retirement plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Melissa Reams, Deputy City Manager. The City of Stillwater is a charter member of the Oklahoma Municipal Retirement Fund. We joined that fund in July of 1966, and the fund is 56 years old. In 1985, July 1st of 1985, the city made the decision to move from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Again, remembering that a defined benefit plan can throw the employer into a funding conundrum. A lot of plans that we hear about these days are underfunded on the employer side, and a defined contribution plan helps moderate or modulate the contribution that the employer makes to the plan. So there was a good financial reason for making that change. In visiting with who I like to refer to as our resident historian, Monty Carnes, he explained to me that some of the compromises that were reached between the counselors at that time and city management when they made the jump from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan was this elongated or longer vesting schedule, because currently our vesting schedule is 10 years. You vest 50% after the completion of your 5 years of service, and then you vest 10% each of the next 5 years until you're 100% vested at 10 years. So it was interesting to hear that perspective of why we reached the vesting schedule that we did. In addition to the 10-year vesting schedule, the employee contributes 3% every paycheck, and the employer matches 6% every paycheck. And all the employees that are covered under this plan are what I call our civilian employees. They're not covered under a collective bargaining agreement. So staff undertook analysis of 2 components of the retirement plan: the vesting schedule and the funding by the employer. In consulting with the folks at OMRF, the vesting schedule at 10 years is a very popular plan. They do see other cities with that elongated vesting schedule, and they would recommend a vesting schedule not less than 7 years. So if we looked at a 7-year vesting schedule, after 3 completed years of service, the employee would vest 20%, and then they would vest an additional 10% or 20% for each of the next 4 years, to where you're 100% vested at 7 years. This adjustment to the plan would not necessarily cost the city any more money. We do get forfeitures from people that leave our service before they have vested in whatever percentage of the employer benefit is out there, and that comes back to us as a reduction in what we have to send in then for that month. So there is that trade-off, but it feels odd to say we're going to invest money only to hope that we get it back because people are leaving us. That felt a little off to me when I was talking to OMRF about that. The other option that we looked at, or the other research that we did, was an increase to the employer match. And this is on the screen is the proposal that we have. So what our base match is right now, the employee puts in 3%, the employer matches with 6%. each time for the next 4 steps that the employee puts in an additional percentage, we would match it with an additional percentage. At the end, if you put in a full 7%, the city would match 10, and you would have a total contribution to your plan of 17%. This gets us more in line with what police and fire are receiving through police and fire pension. There are 13 cities within our OMRF community that are DC-only plans, like the city of Stillwater. There are 4 plans that contribute less than the city of Stillwater does to their pension plan. So I started trying to project what would this look like for us if we increased the contribution to the plan. And the first thing I looked at is what is our maximum exposure. If we were to increase for everybody that's eligible in the OMRF plan, if we just jump to 10%, everybody says, yeah, well, I'm in, I'm going to contribute 7, what would 10 look like? And that maximum exposure is about $2.4 million. Currently, we are contributing $1.4 million on the base assessed pay. So you can see that's about $1 million difference there. We have 110 employees right now that are contributing more than the 3%, and kudos to them. That's awesome that they can do that. So I got that 110 people, and I stratified them looking for the percentages, and I applied that to the salary to see what that might look like based on a graduated or varied participation. So that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. We have about 73% of our full-time positions, which is a total 114, that contribute just 3%. They get the 6% match. We have 1% that contributes 1 more percent, so they would get 7. 2% that contribute 5, so they'd get 8, and so then 9 and 10. And I was surprised at the percentage of people that are contributing more than the 7% already. So you can see how that kind of plays out as a scenario that could happen based on a statistical sample that we just happen to have within our population. That would be a change to our contribution of about $216,000. So what options do we have available to us? Well, we could leave the plan the way it is. We could adjust the vesting schedule. We can adjust the employer contribution rate, or you could adjust the employer contribution rate, phasing it in over time. All of these adjustments would happen July 1st so that they're captured within a current fiscal year. It just makes the bookkeeping that much easier. And we are still, just so you know, we're still working on our budget for fiscal year 23. That's why I'm using 22 data. Things probably are going to be relatively the same. So we will be happy to bring this back to you based on your direction with the fiscal year 23 budget. And now I'm going to turn it over to Becky, and she's going to walk us through the results of the employee survey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Becky Taylor, Chief Civic Innovation Officer. In November of 2021, City of Stillwater kicked off its coaching engagement with vibrant community partners with a set of goal and deliverables. Those included improve employee morale, engagement, and retention, assist the city in becoming a best-in-class employer, engage employees so they become champions of the city, advise on managing changing work patterns, and continue to build civic trust and promote healthy and productive civic discourse. In addition to weekly coaching calls, we partnered with Beyond Feedback, a neutral third-party company, to conduct an employee-wide survey with the goal of receiving baseline data in order to create impactful solutions and see improvements as we follow through with the survey each following year. The survey started on Monday, January 31st, and was live for 2 weeks until it closed on Friday, February 11th. Brady and I implemented an employee survey internal team that consisted of one champion from each department, and a couple of them are here this evening. This team helped us reach an 81% participation rate, which is an above industry rate compared to other municipalities across the nation. Beyond Feedback is working with us to dig deeper into this data and find areas of strength and opportunity, but we wanted to take this opportunity with the topic tonight at this session to share a few pieces that were highlighted from the survey. And the findings validate the need of much of what you've already heard from Christy, Brady, and Melissa. Our employee engagement score is 80%. And this score is determined by a favorable job satisfaction score and a favorable response to the question about one's likelihood to stay with the city. This score is average with other municipalities across the nation. Another bright spot on this high-level glance at the survey is our supervisors. 81% of citywide employees rated their supervisor as effective. As imagined, this rating is above average when looking at data from other municipalities across the nation. Again, when we look at what's going well, what can be better, and what the next steps, this is based solely on a high-level look at the survey results. So we're still working closely with Beyond Feedback to dig deeper into the results, and this is something we will work on throughout the next couple of months. So what's going well? Good teamwork and cooperation. 86% of our employees expressed great teamwork. 86% felt support from their supervisor, and 83% felt like they have received adequate training for their role within the city. And what can be better? 1/3 of our employees do not think they are paid appropriately. Also, when looking at overall morale, 23% of our employees feel the overall morale is not good. And this rating was mainly driven by 3 departments, which allows us to be intentional with our plan to address this one specifically. And nearly 1/4 of employees feel the city is not interested in their personal growth. Although we do not want our employees to feel this way, we are not entirely surprised. After almost 2 years of COVID, continuously understaffed in some departments, and seeing employees leave, these 3 items validate the items that Christy, Brady, and Melissa already spoke about. We knew we needed to address these items, and this survey only validated what we saw already when it comes to employee recruitment and retention. The other good thing about these areas of opportunity is it's actionable. All 3 of those items can be solved and addressed. Some of the next steps include reviewing results in detail by department. As I already mentioned, this is merely a high-level look, but over the next few months, we will work with Beyond Feedback to dive deeper into the departmental level data and more, so we can be more strategic and intentional in our responses. And we can also use the results of the survey as input to city improvement plans as we move forward. We can also develop departmental action plans for areas of opportunity. This employee-wide survey is an important step in the right direction for us. We have some work to do, but we are committed to doing it. And speaking for all of us, we would love to answer any questions that you may have on any of the topics you've heard this evening. I'm going to sit, so just call us up as you have a question for one of us, because I won't answer all the questions, I'm sure.
Well, thank you to all the presenters for that great information. At this point, Mr. McNichol?
Yeah, I have said this before, continue to believe this. It's probably more important now than ever. Our employees are our number one asset. We cannot provide services to our citizens without them. And the world has changed over the last 2.5 years. And the way that we employ people has changed over the last 2.5 years. We know some things that we need to do. Others we need to do some work on. We're really not asking anything tonight. Once you've asked all your questions, with the exception of kind of a nod to go ahead and try this pilot program in the summer. And all of these items we will bring back to you as we develop the budget. And you might say to me, well, that ought to be really easy with the increased revenue. It's not. We have had some increased expenses. We had Winter Storm Uri, which was a big bite. You're talking about $6.1 million. And so we're continuing to work on that. That's not to discourage employees to say we're not going to do anything. It's just what we might be able to provide. So as Becky said, to wrap things up, we have work to do, and we will do that and come back at a later date. But would like to get your questions answered now.
Thank you, Norman. Before I just open it up to the counselors, I just would like to maybe make the statement that city employees a lot of times are a pretty easy target for folks. I get a lot of comments, well, not a lot, but more than I should, about public employees are not always viewed in the most positive light, and I think that's a real shame, because in the 6 years that I've been engaged in leadership here at the City of Stillwater, I've seen nothing but excellent service by the public employees in this community. I think they do great work in very challenging circumstances, in many cases, extremely challenging circumstances. And, it's I think unfortunate sometimes we talk about pay raises or, cost of living adjustment or providing additional benefits and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, some people's knee-jerk reaction is that, why do we pay people so much at the city, or why did, that have these reactions. And I think it's something that we all need to be aware of and work to counter in terms of our community, and let our community know how valuable and how high performing the employees are here at the City of Stillwater, and how important it is that we continue to not only retain but to attract highly skilled and folks who are going to be good at their jobs here, because it's such a direct impact on the services that we provide and that we're able to provide back to our community. So just wanted to highlight that we know sometimes this is a challenging discussion, and to our city employees here in the City of Stillwater, we value what you do, and we want to find ways for you to be able to do it better, and for you to be happy and fulfilled in the careers that you have here at the City of Stillwater. We appreciate your work, and I'm sure as we have this discussion, we'll all be committed to the idea of providing the best work environment we can for employees at the City of Stillwater. With that said, counselors, what questions do you have for our team tonight?
I would start by, this comment has been made several times, there's no bigger asset to the city than its employees. I know that as someone who manages people, that there's no bigger asset than the people that I get to work with on a daily basis in my professional life. So I would just reiterate what has been said about the importance of our city employees and what a great job they do. And I see that every time, throughout the storm last week, throughout different times throughout the community, that our city employees just step up and do a fantastic job. So that's just a thank you on my part. As a question, in terms of salary, when we talked about a cost of living adjustment, what budget-wise, what does that look like as a percentage increase or a dollar amount? Do we have a ballpark on that?
We do, and our payroll, which is one of the most expensive things that we deal with in an annual basis, $23 million, $23.6. And to talk in general terms at this point, because there are some people that, there are some work classifications that may need an adjustment different than just a cost of living increase. But in general terms, 2% increase across the board would be $500,000, 3% about $710,000, and 4% at about $950,000. So, but again, to reiterate, there are individual positions that we need to look at because of certifications or advanced degrees or that kind of thing that probably also need an adjustment. So the idea is to take a overall look before we bring you the budget at the end of this month. So, and frankly, we may not be able to get all of that quickly. As I told you, as Christy mentioned, one of the things that we've argued about here for the 40 some odd years I've been here is, who do we compare to? Well, we compare to those that are taking our employees, or that we compare to those where we don't really fit a little cubbyhole. I mean, you can look at Manhattan, Texas. You can look at Norman. Norman's got a much bigger tax base than we do. Edmond, same thing, much bigger tax base. We're pretty unique. And sometimes we don't have the same services, but to get a consultant to get us that comparable might be pretty difficult, as Christy indicated. So we're working on all of that.
But we are looking at specific areas that may need more of an adjustment than others.
Yes.
too.
I have a couple of questions on the sort of flexible scheduling or the changes in scheduling. I don't know if Brady, if you want to respond to some of these. I appreciated that you broke down sort of the inside and outside City Hall. I could see there being kind of a difference there. I mean, certainly the folks that keep the lights on don't work an 8 to 5. And I also appreciate that you said you're going to kind of go back and see what else can be done with allowing more flexibility there. Even within City Hall, there's sort of also a breakdown between folks who are customer facing and dealing with customers on a day-to-day basis versus folks who are just getting their work done in their office sort of folks, right? Is there did you guys look at a difference there, and whether there could be differences between sort of customer service facing versus non-customer service facing?
For sure. Yep. And I think one of the main reasons it's kind of an all or nothing with inside City Hall is security reasons, locking down the building. Okay. So, for instance, utility billing or municipal court are probably your most customer-facing departments, and in that, and I went back to those managers and discussed with them, what do Friday afternoons look like as far as, and in those move-in weekends, definitely utility billing is one of those areas we would want to cover. Mm-hmm. But again, looking at these other municipalities, Edmond, Mustang, they said our citizens just got used to the new change.
We can add Pawnee to that too. I was in Pawnee last week, and they did the same thing. And I don't want to interrupt what you're. I sometimes think we have these situations and challenges, and we tend to overthink. And sometimes starting with some of the simplest changes can make a bigger impact than we realize. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Our city staff are amazing, and I would probably guess most of them are probably here before 7:30 or 8 on a regular basis. And so. I also like that it speaks to the fact that there are those of us who do work 8 to 5 and would like to pay a bill early or go after work. And so you were mindful in thinking about the public as well, which is the whole purpose of what we're here for too, is just to the public. But I think there's something to be said about what can be done morale-wise too when you make a change like this. And so you're right, other cities are doing it, and I think the public, it speaks well that they aren't having complaints. The public have said, yeah, this is a good thing. So sometimes starting with something as simple as that allows morale to pick up and could make a difference with that. So
I was just clarifying that this would be City Hall's operating hours for everybody that works at City Hall, not just the customer service part of that, right?
It would
so
be,
the engineering staff would be off on Friday afternoons.
Yep. It'd be a nice, some would prefer 410s. I mean, everyone has their own work schedule. Yeah. This is just our way to offer something that is, like Vice Mayor just mentioned, that something that is attractive to new recruits. I actually look forward to a few people, if we do this change, that say, hey, you get your Friday afternoons off? That's not fair. Great, come work for the city of Stillwater, because we are hiring. I think it would be across the board, but again, it is we're going to do that pilot, and we're going to learn a lot through the pilot. And I think incremental change or testing is a good thing to do to see what challenges we have and address any complaints that are there.
Yeah, I was wondering from the pilot perspective, just thinking as a parent who drops a kid off at school in the mornings, it would be good to extend, if we could extend that pilot, either start it a little bit while school's still in session or keep it into the fall when school's in session, because I could see potentially parents or folks who need to drop a kid off in the morning, if they've got to be here an hour or half an hour earlier, those were the folks that first popped into my mind as maybe the most affected by this. So I'd want to make sure that we've got a plan, or we've looked at how much impact that will have, and just doing the pilot during the summer, we may not see some of those issues that you'd see during a school year.
Yeah, and that date we have till September 5th as the pilot would fall into the start of school, the first 3 weeks of school maybe, and so we consider the same thing, whether it's spring the right time or fall, and we honestly thought summer, with the busyness of contractors, that we would learn and hear anything. We want to obviously be mindful of our builders and developers in town, and so we catch them during the busy season. And as well, if the employees do love the change, like we think they will, and we've heard that other communities that employees love the change, they're willing to get excited and make whatever changes they need to for childcare reasons.
While we're on that topic, I also had a similar question. And I'm hopeful that we're thinking about ways that not only we're looking at employee satisfaction and morale, but also how the citizens respond to this. I don't know if we're looking at security cameras and seeing how many people come up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday and the doors are locked. I mean, whatever those methods are of surveying the community and identifying possible holes, that we're thinking about that side of it too.
Yes. Yep. Dana Maddox is here, and she does such an incredible job with our utility billing. But we've talked about, as soon as we kind of have this nudge or this approval, and I guess it's the city manager's call, but we were gonna start tracking data. And do we have those customers that come every Friday afternoon? Can we identify them? Can we help communicate with them that this upcoming change is coming in the summer, and try to be proactive? But again, that pilot period does allow us to do exactly what you're saying, Counselor, about tracking data and trying to see what we can do to address any concerns or any areas that we're missing citizens. Okay. For sure.
Brady, can you talk a little bit more about how you'll track data? Will there be surveys that you do with employees to understand kind of what their thoughts are? And I don't know how we would survey the public users, but will it be kind of direct questions, or will it be kind of anecdotal data?
Yeah, I think first on the internal side, I think, we want to encourage our directors and our supervisors to be in constant communication with our employees. I think this survey pointed out that we need to improve some of those communication lines in our organization that we're going to be addressing. So we hope that we are gaining feedback from our employees, whether they like this change or not. And then, yes, as far as the data outside, I think it's going to be tracking, complaints and concerns. And I haven't considered cameras, but as Councilor Cart just mentioned, maybe cameras or other ways to see where citizens are affected by that early close on a Friday, because that's really what we're looking at. Otherwise, they're getting 9 extended service periods during the day. So we're just talking about that Friday 11:30 close.
Yeah. I think it's really great that you, as somebody that serves in the private sector, that serves a lot of public sector clients, that you're thinking about ways to be more flexible. I do think that is a competitive disadvantage for a lot of our municipalities. And I think that you're right. Unfortunately, it's very hard to run city government in a work from home space. It's just, right, there's too many customer facing opportunities. The need for collaboration across departments and things makes it really challenging. So I think to provide some flexibility to staff without hopefully causing too many, or maybe even opening up more opportunity to customers coming in, I think it's great. It's definitely a disadvantage that I've seen in as I work with public sector folks.
And I think there's something to be said too about the morale of the employees. If you're doing customer service and you have a small change in your schedule that will allow you to have these moments of better service to the public, your own personality and your own way that you interact with the customer or the client is I think, going to be better. And I think the public will see that. And I have no doubt we'll hear if it's not going as well as we had thought. But I think we would be pleasantly surprised that I think we're all a little tired after the last couple of years and are looking at ways that can help provide a work balance lifestyle and being able to provide that for our staff, and then elevating perhaps the way that we interact with the public would be a good thing too.
I agree. Yep.
You mentioned Edmond, Wassa, and Mustang. How long have they had this type of flexible schedule or this adjusted work schedule in place?
It's a great question. So Edmond started theirs pre-COVID. So I believe it was 2019 they started this change, seeing that they needed something that would benefit employees and the citizens. But Mustangs was more recent. It was during COVID. They just realized the same thing. They're competing with private industry that has flexible schedules and alternative work hours, and so they wanted to do something, and their change was very successful there in Mustang.
I asked because as we talk about data points and what kind of things you would track, Edmond, if they've done this for multiple years now, might have some data points that they could recommend tracking. I think surveying the employees would be a great way to do it, but also looking at employee retention to see how that shifts as we have this type of program.
Right.
I'd be curious too if there's a way to, does it help as far as, and Dana, but payments, are payments being made better? I mean, are there more consistency? Is there a better, just because it's easier access maybe for some to come before or after work? I mean, I'd be curious to see if we see a change in that as well, because that might be impactful.
Yep. And I think in addition to that, I think, like I mentioned, we need to increase our messaging on our online services that are available for payment and permits 24/7.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. I hope when we do get done with the pilot program, we have some hard data points on, how many people showed up at 7:30 or 5:40, 5:30, how much did we really, how many citizens benefited from those extended hours would be helpful to see. Definitely we'll want to see some numbers on employee feedback, how they felt about it.
Okay.
But some hard data there will be important to know if the pilot was successful or not.
Yep, I agree.
Counselors, what else?
Christy, I wanted to ask you, how many openings do we actually have in the city?
I can't give you that answer right off the top of my
Okay.
head, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
I know through last year, we number our postings numerically in order, and we were up over 180 postings
Is
in
there a
1 year.
particular area, or is it spread across the?
We have in some of our utility groups where it's outside weather oriented, and we've seen some of the increase in different job types that are inside for them, or oil or travel or industry specific. So we're having a hard time right now, what I would say, with our degreed professionals.
Okay.
And we're seeing some of that based on private sectors being able to have a increase in what they're able to recruit, and some of that work from home, flexible life balances, and some of those scheduling. And then some of our frontline employees, water utilities, public works, waste management, that type of employee, that the starting salaries across the board are different for all types of food services, or any of our maintenance workers or others that are also struggling with that same type of employee, that initial recruitment.
I know that obviously in my professional life working at Meridian, we're seeing a certain industry area where there are a lot of people retiring, and so having that workforce replace those that are retiring, I didn't know if that was another challenge that the city is having as far as finding people that are actually trained or skilled enough to do the job that's open.
What we're seeing a lot of right now is that people are much more transient in employment.
Okay.
And so it used to be considered if you stayed at a job for 2 years and then left, it was job hopping. And now it's not. A lot of times it's a promotion or progression in a career. It's just different across different organizations. And or some of them are much more flexible in where they live. They don't mind moving from home like we used to see more. And so we're seeing, the changes in employment and employees and what's valuable to them. And, some of them for industry specific, you could pull a card in journeyman and go out to be an electric, journeyman lineman in California and come home with $300,000 in a year. And so we're seeing those choices of I will move away from my family for a year to put some serious bank and then come back and see, what's left for me in municipality after. And so we're chasing a lot more dollars across all of our different positions. And then we are having difficulties we're having applications that come in and then they're just using that as a competing job offer at current employment. Or we're having difficulties with getting people through the process, even though we've fast-tracked it, failing drug testing, failing references, failing backgrounds. Our level of applicants in the form of quality and quantity is severely decreased right now.
Thank you.
Do we have any information on, trend information would be great, but the average length of service for a city employee or even like a frequency distribution of how many employees have been here for X number of years, and then trends of that to see is that decreasing? Do we see that in data, or do we anecdotally think that's what's happening?
We can give you firm hard data. We looked at CPIs recently, and so Becky Brady and I just recently had this conversation. So our average tenure for our employees is just over 11 years, and that's very solid, especially in a municipality and especially given the current situation in employment. That stayed about status quo from what it was last year. It dropped just a few point decimals. Now, one stat that I will give you that is horrifying for us as an organization is last year we had one employee who was a full-time hire who left within 6 months. That was in 2020. In 2021, we had 16. And so that is the stat of even once we do get them on board, we're unable to retain them due to competing job offers or pay structure or the ability to move locations and follow that dollar or place of employment, flexibility, work from home, et cetera.
And that's expensive.
That's
because
very
You've
expensive.
onboarded, you've invested in those people, and then 6 months later, they're gone.
It's not only expensive, but it's also an immediate hit to morale, not only for the teams that go through the hiring processes, but the teams that are continually having to train and then see people leave. And then you see that also in your training, because when you get a new employee on your team, you're automatically starting to be a little bit jaded about how quickly are they going to leave and what type of investment do I even want to put in them. So it's expensive in a dollar and it's expensive in morale and just that emotions for our employees.
You mentioned in your report using a compensation consultant, which I'm fine with, but the city also has a history of engaging in consultants and not always making the best use of that data. Do we know what that investment is, how much that's going to cost?
What we're doing right now is there's a couple different things with municipalities. Traditional municipality compensation consultants would come in, they would look at all of our job descriptions, do a benchmarking, and give us a 20 or 15 step pay range. We're finding that those no longer work for us as an organization. And so what we're looking at now is being more flexible in our pay bands, being much shorter, and looking at making sure the payments are appropriate based on the return on investment that the employees give. I can give you Chris Knight, for example, in waste management. When he hires an employee without their CDL and they obtain their CDL, that's the largest return on value because now they're much more marketable. We want them to stay. So that should be the largest increase in their salary at that point and not have to take 5 years to get to such an increase. So we're starting to really look at the way we structure and kind of move away from that traditional municipality pay structure of tenure-based. And so we've been talking right now, what we're doing is talking to a number of consultants and seeing what their history is, what their work ethic on private versus public municipalities to see where that expertise lays. So we're not even working on that RFP yet. We're working on just having those in-depth conversations to see what their recommendations are, what their experience is, and honestly to see what their job tasks are with municipalities in the current climate, so that we don't have an investment of funds that gets us a reiteration of what we see is not working for us.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, Chrissy, do we do all of the sort of recruiting and vetting applications and all that sort of stuff, that's all done in-house?
Unless
Do
we
use-
hire an external consultant for specific positions.
Okay.
We'll have certain, right now we're using one for engineering, just because we've done numerous recruitments
Yep.
and we've been unsuccessful. So by tapping into their client base where they already have applications on file where people have reached out to them instead of us just throwing a job and seeing who's open. So we will do that for certain types of positions. What we're seeing right now is they're not giving us applications names.
Yeah.
They are having difficulty sourcing, and so we're looking at experience and salaries and what we're requesting and what they're able to even recruit for.
Yeah.
So primarily in-house, with a number of organizations and newsletters and posting boards and acceptables like that, but certain key positions we will outside externally recruit.
Have you done a sort of a look at the recruiting process itself and sort of, how people apply, what the response times are, sort of what the steps are in the process? I just, again, speaking from my experience day to day, we've had to sort of revamp because it seems like applicants now expect a different interaction with potential employers.
We've got a number of areas that what we call fast tracking. So traditional job posting of before was we open it for 2 weeks, and at the end of the 2 weeks we review all applications, and then people sit down, and it may be a week or so before we get scheduled, for interviews, and then we'll get back to them in a couple of days. Those candidates are gone by the time we get through that process. So what we're doing for fast track in a number of our areas, waste management, water utilities, public works, they will apply. A supervisor reviews that application the same day, and they typically are scheduled for a phone interview the following day. And if that phone interview is successful, then they're going to come in and do an in-person interview so that we can get them obviously fast-tracked. Now, they still have to do driving record and drug testing and backgrounds and references, but we've already made that offer. And so they know that should they pass that, which they have a good idea if they will or not, they already have that offer on. So they're stop applying for other jobs or stop interviewing for other people. And we've seen some success. We've also just worked with IT to get a texting platform so that we can actually text, because we're finding that current employees, our applicants, aren't really good at following up with phone calls or scheduling interviews. Or if they're trying to reach my team does work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That if I call you and you're sitting at your desk of your current employer, you're not going to answer the phone call to schedule an interview where your office mates can hear me, but you will text me back. And then we're also seeing the no-call, no-shows. And so we're going to start texting them, hey, your interview with the City of Stillwater is tomorrow. Reply 1 to confirm or 2 to cancel, and try and see if we can get those ones who won't come for the interview, if we can at least get some notice. So we're trying to change some of the ways that we communicate with applicants, the time frames going, just based on what we're seeing, trying to be more responsive.
Do we respond to everyone that submits an application?
We respond to, if you submit an application, we typically advise you that if you're selected for an interview, you'll be notified. And then if you're interviewed and didn't receive the position, you should receive a notification from my team. We are struggling with some email spams and some voicemails not being set up. And so we are aware of that, and we're looking at that, because that's the biggest thing is we want you to reapply even if you weren't selected for that position. So I think that's something that we'll continue to look at.
And last one from me, at least. Do you if someone applies for a specific position, are they considered for potentially other positions within the city? Like, do we have a cross-reference sort of, we go, well, this person may not be perfect for this one, but maybe they'll fit this other one, and we can automatically move them over?
Typically what we do, like I said, in past periods, you would apply for a specific position. But yes, to answer your question, we are advising other people. We had one just recently where somebody got an email in their group, and they had a certification for another group. So we contacted that supervisor and said, hey, would you be interested in interviewing them? So we do have a lot more cross-communication going on now.
Okay, thank you. Counselors, well, what other questions do we have?
Well, I'll say that I see inside a lot of retirement plans in my profession, and I think this matching schedule for the contributions is substantially more competitive, and I think it's a really positive move. I will also say that from a vesting perspective, going from 10 years to 7 years is an improvement, but I don't think it's particularly competitive with the private sector. You're just going to nod your head and agree with me. Okay.
Is there a reason that when you said that OKMRF doesn't recommend a vesting schedule shorter than 7 years, but that is not competitive.
No, it's not. And I have been in other governmental organizations where the vesting schedule was 5 years. I think that, again, thanks to our resident historian, Monty shared the perspective of how our 10 years was negotiated. And I believe that the staff at OMRF shares some of that perspective of these elongated vesting schedules helping us retain employees. If our average retention or our average experience with the city is 11.4 years, I don't know that that's the problem. You've got a city manager who's got 45 years in. I'm the baby of the group. I've been here 7 years, 6.5 years. So I do think that we could look at a little shorter. It just was not their recommendation to do that.
Okay. Well, in a period where we have increasingly mobile employees, and they're going to continue to be increasingly mobile, having longer vesting periods isn't necessarily going to keep them here. It's just going to have them leave mad.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that doesn't help us either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that people are moving jobs, like somebody said. I mean, 2 years is a long tenure for a lot of people in their jobs now, and it's not out of the norm at all. And I think someone who's looking at a vesting schedule and saying, I'm not going to be there 10 years, I probably won't be there 7 years.
Right.
I mean, that not only are we not going to be able to keep those people 7 years, they're not going to take the job, right? Because they're looking at something where they're going, well, I'm not going to get any of that money, or I'm not going to get a big chunk of that money.
I think from an employer perspective, and you all have touched on this, we have a big investment in our employees.
Yep.
And the group that I'm most familiar with is the airport. And Paul has had to really retool how he trains employees, because it was a turnstile there for a while. We'd send them off and get $10,000 in training invested in these people, and then 6 months later they're gone. So he's really he analyzed and got to the root of that problem, and we fixed how we do our training. But I think we need to look at return on that training investment and that investment in that employee, and where do we think you might set that fully vested schedule as to where you think you've gotten back in years of service that investment in training. And is it 5, 6, or 7? 8? I don't know. I will say, when I was at the state, the OPER's vesting schedule was an 8-year vesting schedule, but it was also a defined benefit plan.
I think that from the public sector perspective, or the private sector perspective rather, I think 3 years is a long vesting period. And so, and Will's nodding his head over there. So, I mean, if we're trying to be competitive with the private sector, we need to be thinking about being competitive with the private sector.
And because I think looking at this and going, oh, longevity, people will stick around for 10 years if they're going to get all their retirement. I don't think that's as big of an issue for people now as maybe it was
Back in 1985.
56 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's, I think we certainly do need to worry about long-term, retention and how to keep people here long enough to recoup that investment. But I don't think this is the best tool we have to bolster long-term retention of employees. We need to look at other ways to do that, because this, if we're talking about certainly early stage career people, it's real easy to walk away from, that 30% you haven't invested yet, or that 40% you haven't invested
Absolutely.
yet.
And I think it is the difference between a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan. Under a defined benefit plan, the carrot to keep people there was that fixed, guaranteed retirement.
Right. The pension.
The pension. And under the defined contribution plan, it really is, it's partly the employer contribution, but it's really up to the employee to say, this is what I'm going to need to retire on, so here's the contributions I need to be making, and whatever the employer makes is just gravy on top of that. But it's really more incumbent upon the employee at that point.
One other thing, just in terms of the employer contribution, that we might consider is, as people are here longer, the amount that they could have matched being adjusted. So maybe the first year it can't be above
Right.
a 6% match. But as they're here, 1 more year, 2 more years, maybe adjusting that, and that helps keep the cost down a little and also
Hopefully encourage-
And encourage them to
benefits the people
yeah.
that are here longer.
Yeah.
Do you mind, Vice Mayor Zanotti and Councilor Hawkins, you work for education entities. Do you know what the vesting schedule is for your entity?
I can find out for you.
Okay.
very
I can
easily.
make too.
I'm just, it helps. I
Yeah.
love that you guys
Yeah.
have talked about data points
Yeah.
tonight. This is, it really rocks my world, data points. And so the more comparisons we
Yeah.
can do, I think that's awesome. Again, we're government. We have to compete with the private sector, but we still are a governmental entity, and so we need to
can't
look at that.
compete with the private sector.
Well, I know. Well, I think we can't. Well, I'm
Well,
not
we-
going to
we
debate that
can,
with you
but-
today. I
but-
will pick that up later.
The thing that, and we have the same issue at Oklahoma State University of people getting offers that it's hard to compete with. But I think one of the things that we do try to communicate to people is the security of their jobs at OSU.
Absolutely.
And we didn't lay people off during the pandemic. We didn't have furloughs.
Yep.
They continued to work, and a lot of private industries did not. So I think there are ways that it can be marketed, and benefits that we can share in terms of what city employment and municipality employment has to offer.
Oh, you are absolutely right. And as we are visiting with people, we stress work-family balance. I mean, it's coming from public accounting where we worked nonstop, and especially during tax season, we work nonstop. I go home at 5 o'clock and I shut it off. Well, I try. And if you're in public accounting, you're at a consulting engineering firm, I'm sure Monty can speak to that. If you're at a legal firm, Kimberly can speak to that. They expect you, I think, to work whatever it takes to get the job done. And certainly we expect that here, but it's a different kind of grind in the private sector.
Well, and the twofold on that too is, how many employees truly understand the retirement process. I mean, when you reach a certain age, all of a sudden you're like, well, dang, I need to start paying attention.
That's right.
But there's also those that don't think about that. So how does that, I think having that conversation in the hiring process or the conversation about the job of why it would be
Right.
important to is something to think about too. We assume maybe that they
And-
understand everything.
Well, having 3 adult children and one that seems to want to do this job hopping, I still call it job hopping. It finally occurred to him the other day that every time he leaves an employer, he loses a few steps in his retirement. And so that has helped him gain a little satisfaction at his job that he's currently at because he was ready to hop again. And I'm like, don't do that. You stick where you are and kind of ride it out a little bit. So that you're right. As we onboard these people, that was one of the criticisms we've had is that we've not been very transparent about what our retirement does look like. And Christy and Leah and Sarah do an awesome job of onboarding these people. We used to spend a whole day with them. We spend most of the morning walking through these very things, and I cannot think that during that orientation, it is not thoroughly disclosed that the vesting schedule is 10 years like it is.
So I think it would be great as we continue this conversation to see some different options for earlier vesting,
Okay.
for sort of a hybrid vesting.
I like the hybrid,
Councilor
yeah.
Hawkins,
I mean,
yeah.
I think there are lots of options out there, and as long as we can do it within the confines of our plan document,
Sure.
I think we're open to any and all suggestions. So I will visit with OMRF about that hybrid. I really like that.
I would be interested in seeing a copy of the plan document, by the way.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to send that to you.
Just
And-
one other comment as we go forward having this discussion. I assume your calculations for what it would look like if we increased the matching are based on current salary levels.
On the budgeted salary dollars for fiscal year '22, with any of the fire and police subtracted out, because
Yeah.
theirs is a separate.
Okay, but when we see them in the meantime, because we've also talked about potentially a COLA, so we'd want to factor the COLA in.
Right,
Because
right,
that's
and,
gonna
and
add
there
to
was
the-
no COLA factored into those numbers.
Yeah, just so we're looking at numbers
Absolutely,
that- yeah.
apples to apples.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselors, what else? I will just say about the employee survey, I'm really interested to see the more in-depth numbers that you guys are still digging into. I think this is a great first step to, to actually have these conversations. It's one of the things I was thinking, when we came in tonight was we really want to make sure as we're talking about what's it gonna, what do we want to see for our employees to feel, better about being here and being here longer. The only way we really know that is if we ask the employees. And so it is really good to have this data, and looking forward to seeing more of it. And then also talking about how do we do this on a regular basis going forward. We've got the sort of metrics that we've built over the last couple of years. And so that plan for what will these metrics look like and how are we going to check them regularly, I think will be a good part of that discussion in the future too.
Yeah, when I was at Mercruiser, I was department head, and we did these at Mercury Marine every other year. We didn't try to do it every year, but every other year. And the data we got out of it was really powerful and allowed us to focus our attention on fixing the things we needed to fix. And so I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, 81% is a great return.
Anything else? Staff, anything else you want to let us know before we let you go? Well, there's nothing else on the agenda for tonight. So I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn the city council study session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, city council is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here.